Welcome to Celebration Conversations. I'm your host, Sarah Taylor Young. Join me each week as I talk to singer-songwriters, artists, and friends about how they have turned their pain into purpose. Here at Celebration Conversations, it is my hope that you find motivation and celebration in your own journey. Let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here with y'all today.
Yes, we're so excited to have you, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Adam's on here. He's kind of getting his feet wet with the podcast interviews, so I'm excited. So tell a little bit about What They Taught Me, your new book. It's on Amazon. I have not dived in completely yet, but I know it's going to be awesome.
So, I love women investing in women, and I just have been tremendously impacted by the women who have invested in me in my life. I wrote this book, What They Taught Me, because I looked around at my life and I realized so much of who I am is made up by the women who have invested in me and what they've passed along to me. And not only just the women that there are chapters in, but also my mom, and being open-handed. Not only is she an incredible mom, but she allowed other voices to step in and to guide me along the way. It shows me a lot about how I want to show up as a mom, to leave room for other voices. And so I had these women pass along what they knew. They weren't famous, they weren't extra special. They were just normal women in my everyday life, crushing it in one area of life, or maybe two, maybe more, but all that to say, they're not perfect. They're not crushing it in every area of life, because what human being is. But they just were willing to share what they knew in the departments they were killing it at. And I am forever grateful and impacted by that. And I think that paves the way for me to realize, like, I love doing that for other women a few steps behind me. So that is the heart behind What They Taught Me, and really just my life message too.
Yes, I'm excited to dive in. I got the book, and I was surprised that there are questions at the end of each chapter. I was like, yes, it's an interactive thing, because I love books that have like a study guide and stuff. So I was just so excited about that. So yes, and Kelsey, you were somebody who invested in me when I was kind of down with my music stuff. I remember I would get to talking to you, and you would kind of encourage me, help build me up, and your Dream to Done course was amazing. So yeah,
Well, Sarah, there's nothing I love more than watching you shine. And so it is so fun to see you step into what you were made to do. Like, I think that's what life's about, is running alongside each other and cheering each other on. And I love getting to see you do that. It's been fun to run alongside each other all these years. And I've had these women model that for me. So how could that not be woven into what I do?
Right. How did you get started with just writing in general? Was that something that you started at a young age, like in middle school?
I've always journaled, and since I was a little girl, like, that has been the main dream, being a writer. I have wanted to be a writer since as far back as I can remember, and I've, had 7 dreams at a time in any given season of life. But that's the consistent dream. That's the one that I'm like, I'm made for this. I want to keep doing this forever. And so I would write these little snippets and these little pieces and think, oh, that's so profound. And then I'd look back on them a few years later and be like, whoa, that's embarrassing, actually.
Right.
But I just kept writing, and I didn't expect it to be anything overnight. I just kind of, journaled along over the years. And then, in the last 6 years, I really decided to take that a little more seriously with starting a blog and a podcast to start refining my message. I knew even that would not be overnight, but it would be an opportunity to start working towards it. And about 3 years in, I woke up and felt like it's time to start writing. Like, I think it's time to start writing in like a serious format. Like, I think this is going to be something. So I wrote that first story about Linnell first, and I realized, oh, I think there's more to this here. there's other ideas for books in me, but I think this is natural for this to be the first one because this is probably the biggest felt need from my audience, from people in my life. I have people ask me all the time how to find a mentor because I'm so open about having them. And I'm not special. I didn't do anything to get these mentors. I just asked. And so I started writing and I was like, I've got more stories in here. And I would love to help other women see who in their life could play that role. And so that's really where the topic of this book came to life. But yeah, I have been writing since I was a little girl. Again, nothing profound, but it has always been something I enjoy doing.
Yes, yes. I remember writing in my journals, I would like be very descriptive and, just think it's so profound. And like I look back on it 5 years later, it's like, oh, Sarah. Yeah. Like, what were you? Bless your heart,
Yes, it's the bless your heart moments. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow, I wrote that.
Yeah. But it's like, I learned from my producer, Brian White, it's like you need to write the bad stuff in order to get to the good, meaty things, otherwise first of all, if you don't do that, you're never going to write anything good. And you're just going to, continue to write the bad things. So you just need to keep going, keep pursuing, even if it is bad, you can look back and think, okay, that was a part of my journey. Like the biggest thing I think I learned from you, Kelsey, is not being perfectionistic. It's better to have it out than have it out perfect, because if you think it's perfect the first time around, you're never going to release it.
Oh my gosh, if you wait for something to be perfect, you'll hold on to it forever.
Right.
So
right.
For me, I definitely relate to perfectionism because I'm an A+ student. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to do it right the first time. Mm-hmm. But I realized that wasn't serving me well in the creative department or my career because, there's always room for improvement. One of my favorite stories, love him or hate him, I think this is a fascinating story. Kanye West released an album on Spotify, Imperfect. Have y'all heard this a ton on the show as an example?
I have, yes. I have. He hasn't, but yes, I love
But love him or hate him, he released it Imperfect and then re-uploaded improved iterations to see his creative process. And I remember my husband and I thinking, that's so brilliant, because often we see the finished work and we're comparing our middle with someone's ending, right? Mm-hmm. But everyone has improvements and tweaks along the way. There's parts of this book now that it's like, okay, next round of printing, I might fix that typo. Even though it's been through 17 rounds of editing, things get missed. And so I just think that there's always room for improvement. And if you wait till it's perfect, you're never going to magically wake up and think you've arrived. And so release it into the world and perfect it along the way.
Yes. Was it you, Adam was telling me, like we're scared about being parents a second time around. Mm-hmm. We're just starting to try for baby number 2. And I asked him one day, I said, are you ready? He said, absolutely not. But if we wait till we're ready, then we're not going to do it.
That was a piece of advice I got when we first got married. A gentleman said, when are you going to have kids? Are you going to have kids? And I said, we won't be ready for that for a while. And he looked at me and he said, well, if you wait until you're ready, you will never have kids.
Yeah. So it's just, you just learn as you go. It's a huge learning curve, on the job training for sure. But it's one of the most beautiful things, I think, that we've been together through. And,
Yeah, nothing fills your heart with joy when coming home from a long day's work and your little one, Daddy, throws her hands up in the air and runs at you, and it's just precious.
I can't wait for that day.
Yeah, it never gets, Mommy. It's just, oh, Mom, you're here. Yeah. Oh, there's that lady again.
No, I'll walk out to warm up the truck, come back in, Daddy,
Yeah.
I missed
I
you.
missed you. We're gone for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So tell me about some of your favorite mentors, women who have kind of run alongside you and what they gave you and what you hope to kind of give back to them.
Man, I think of Amber and Ann. They're probably my career mentors more than anything, but at the same time, they invest so much in my personal life as well. And I think of them a little bit as my board of advisors. I can go to them for the big stuff. I don't go to them every day because they're no longer, in a coaching role where I pay them to be available to me all the time. If I started to realize I need their input every second, like I need to go back and pay them.
Right.
But right now in this season, after our initial format of our relationship shifted into more of a long-term mentoring relationship, I I just know that for the big stuff, they're there. And I can say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think this is a good move for me? Maybe it's not. Maybe this is a little off. Can you be a check here for me? You know my history, you know my story, you have relational equity built with me. You can step in and say, hey, knowing who you are and how you're wired, this doesn't feel like a fit. Are you sure you want to do that just because you were advised to do that by some expert? And so I love that they've been with me for at this point like 4 or 5 years and have walked with me through the mountaintop moments and the valley seasons and are able to give me advice knowing the full spectrum. I truly feel like I would not be where I am in my career without them. Now, I also have these life mentors, and I think of Emily, who started investing in me when I was 14. You know, she was 18 years old, did not have it figured out. She was figuring it out as she went. She's just volunteered to mentor this group of 14-year-olds and figuring out the big questions in her own life. But it wasn't so much about me expecting her to deliver the perfect Bible study or have the most profound wisdom on the planet. I just needed her to be there. And she did offer me wisdom that was profound over the years, but that wasn't really objective number one. Consistency was. And in her consistency and her continuing to show up when it cost her something, when she had $2 in her bank account but was taking us to muffins, when she, made us 7-layer bean dip and cookies and then we all stood her up and didn't come that night, she was there. I was so impacted by knowing I had someone to be steady and there and present for me in that season. And she just modeled for me what consistency does for someone else in their life. And I will be forever changed by that. And it carries me on the hard days when someone's inconsistent or flaky or doesn't take my advice. I go back to, well, I had that. At some point, it might be healthy to set boundaries if that's a pattern. But, I think in any human connection, there's going to be harder seasons. There's no way to get through life untouched by pain. And so how do I weather these hard seasons with someone I'm mentoring? I have these women model that for me. How do I do it? So I'm forever changed. There's 10 women in the book, but there's also room for more women to come into my life over the years to come. I don't expect for one person to have all the information boiled down to pass along to me. You two are married, like even your spouse doesn't complete you. How could
Right.
a mentor,
Yeah.
And so I don't have an expectation that someone's going to complete me or help me make a carbon copy of their perfect life as a mentor. Their life is probably imperfect, especially as you get up close and personal, you'll realize that. But if she's willing to share what she knows and say, don't have it all figured out, certainly haven't arrived, but I'll share what I've got with you to help you get further, by all means, sign me up. I want to learn from her.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I can think of a few mentors, you being one of them, and a few others in the Nashville circuit that have just, really taken me under their wing. Sometimes no strings attached, they just want to see me succeed because they wish they had people, in their corner when they were in my situation.
I've had those as well, of just people who took me under their wing, and I'm so grateful, because especially in those seasons where I needed a little shelter from the storm, I I'll forever be grateful for that, And I think, like, people can be overwhelmed by the idea of mentorship, of like, what's that going to cost me? Like, I don't have time to meet with someone twice a week forever. Like, that's a lot,
Yeah.
especially if you're a mom and like you've got toddlers. My friends who are moms are like, I don't have a 10 a.m. coffee date availability.
Right. Yeah.
I can mentor my babysitter around the counter for 20 minutes before I go to bed at the end of the night. That's about it. And so everyone's season is going to look different for how they mentor. And the heart behind this conversation is to demystify it, take the pressure off, and say, hey, you can look for a mentor or be a mentor in any format. You can tailor it to fit your season you're in. It doesn't have to fit this mold. You don't have to sign up for life. Like, the pressure's off. Just invest in other people, and it will take you far.
Yes. On that, what do you think makes a good mentor for a female or a male? Like, what do you think would be those things that would, be non-gender specific?
Yeah, I think willingness goes a long way. It's a lot more valuable than perfection, right? Because we all know no one's actually perfect, but I think we can have that, like, subconscious expectation with a mentor. Like, I want the most talented person in my industry, the CEO of my company, the pastor at church, whatever. We want the top of the top, but taking that layer of, like, they have to have arrived or perfection off the table. Willingness is so much more valuable. Someone who's willing to carve out time in their schedule, or willing to say, hey, I don't have a ton of free time right now, but you can run errands with me. Someone who just is willing to invest in someone and tailor it to whatever works in that season. I think someone also who values personal growth in their own life. You want someone who's investing in you to be investing in themselves as well, and to be mentored by other people. And so I think that's important in a mentor, is to be continually growing and investing in yourself. And then I think it requires a layer of responsibility as a mentor to not project your story onto someone else's. You have to listen to your mentee, get to know the nuances of who they are, and prayerfully consider what advice to give them, because sometimes you're going to be able to relate to them deeply, but that advice doesn't mean what worked for you doesn't mean it will work for them every single time. We all know that. Nothing's tailor-made or there's no one-size-fits-all answer for everything. And so I think of, like, the most painful parts of mentoring relationships that went wrong for me was when a mentor would not let go of the advice she was giving me because she was projecting her own story onto me. And to the point that we had to get our pastors involved at the church. Like, she won't let go, And it was really painful. And while it was painful for me to experience as a mentee, it also showed me, when I'm a mentor, there will be seasons where I relate to the girl in front of me, where I think she's living the exact story I lived. I need to tell her what worked to get her out of pain as fast as possible. But it's not always that cut and dry. Her personality might determine that she needs a different route to step into freedom. The way she's wired, the family of origin she's from, we're all unique human beings. And so I think as mentors, there's a responsibility to not project our own life experience onto someone, but to just use what we learn from our life experience as one of our tools in our arsenal to guide someone to freedom and fullness and, like, the next right step for them.
Yeah, you know, just because you're mentoring somebody is not going to change what you went through. Like, that's not the purpose of the mentor situation. That you can't change what happened. You can try to help others for what they're going through, but physically you can't force it on somebody. Everybody's got their own path that they need to take, and their own personalities and everything.
Totally. And I think we're all unique in our stories. And so, again, it's not any of our jobs to put a one-size-fits-all piece of advice onto anyone else. It's way more impactful to show up and be a sounding board and to listen. Like I said, I don't remember a ton of the life lessons or keynotes that were passed along to me in their exact form. I did boil those down into stories for my book, but I don't remember like exactly what they said in that moment across the table. I didn't expect it to be zipped up as if they could go present it on a stage somewhere right then and there. I just needed them to be consistent. I didn't need them to have the exact story I had. I just needed their presence.
As a man, honey, what do you think makes a good mentor for the men who have kind of helped you?
Really, what Kelsey said, just being there. Call up, hey, so and so. Got time for lunch this week? Could use an ear. And yeah, we'll do lunch, on Thursday or something. Even if it's just half-hour lunch. It's just someone to be there. Even if it's just someone you can reach out to, say, hey man, I could use prayer this week. Can you pray about this for me? Yeah, I'll do that for you. Just really just being there. Because men know we're busy. We got jobs, we got families, we got wives, we got kids, most of us. And so we know what it's like to be busy. But if it's just something as simple as pray for you about this, or let me know how you're doing, or hey, why don't you come hang out with me, once in a blue moon, just if someone can be there for us, that's huge, from a man's standpoint.
Yeah.
What would you say makes a not so great mentor? Kelsey and then Adam.
Oh, okay.
I think, for, like I said a minute ago, it can be really painful when your mentor starts projecting onto you versus hearing what you need and giving you advice that's more fitted for you. And that, again, that requires a layer of responsibility and self-awareness. Like, oh, am I doing that? Like, it's easy to project. We can all do that. It's not cruel or malicious intent, but it is easy to slip into. And it can be really damaging. And so I think the worst experiences I've had are when someone has projected their story onto me, or they are flaky as a mentor. You want your mentor to be trustworthy. And I think flakiness, when you are kind of submitting under someone's guidance, is really, it leaves you feeling like there's instability in the relationship. And so we're adults, we can move on from that. But when your mentor can't show up in the way they said they would, and it's also their responsibility to set boundaries and set parameters for how they want to show up. Say I want her to meet with me every Thursday and she doesn't have capacity for that and says, I can actually do once a quarter instead. She needs to communicate that to me, because if she crosses her own boundary and commits but then can't follow through, that flakiness is much worse than just saying I can't meet every Thursday, And so I think projection and flakiness can be big sorry, I'm looking for the right word. Those can be painful parts of a failed mentoring relationship. And I've had people commit to mentoring and then not follow through, or cancel calls and not even address it. Like, hey, I'm just going to cancel the call. And it's like, but I literally asked you to be my mentor and you said yes. Has that changed? Can you communicate that to me? Versus like, I'm just going to cancel the call and never follow up. That's weird. Okay. Like, that is a lack of communication, and it leaves someone in the dark and it leaves them confused. So just be clear. And so I think we can all learn from that. It's shown me, oh, if my seasons have shifted, and this is a question I'm getting a lot in my Facebook community around my book right now, is what if it's time to shift? What if I don't have capacity anymore to mentor? Then my advice always is, let them know. It might feel a little awkward to do it. It's going to require brave communication, but it's so much better than them wondering why they haven't heard from you if you're their mentor. And so just say, hey girl, I've loved investing in you. Hey man, I've loved investing in you. this season is looking a lot different with the kids, with the job, with whatever. I'm probably only going to be able to meet like once a quarter or can we circle back in a few months to touch base and see when we can get dinner? Because I love investing in your life. I love hearing what's going on in your world. My personal life just has some demands on it right now that I can't meet. It doesn't have to be cruel or mean. It can just be honest. But I think by giving clarity to the situation, you're preventing pain versus causing it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, Adam.
Well, when Sarah, you asked me, my first thought was exactly what Kelsey talked about, someone who just isn't there.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be my mentor if you're never meeting with me, if you're never talking to me on the phone, and just never there? Because I need something from you. Also, it would be a detriment if my mentor's morals did not line up with my morals. I'm a Christian, so my mentor really needs to be a Christian. Why, if I'm struggling with alcoholism, and I've got a mentor who loves to drink every Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, I'm struggling with alcohol. And he's like, oh, it's okay. Just have one, just stop yourself at one and you'll be fine. Well, no, I don't. Alcohol doesn't work for alcoholics because one leads to more. It will always lead to more. Mm-hmm. That's an example, but yeah, my mentor, morals need to line up with my morals. So I know the advice that I'm wanting is coming from a good place.
A good source.
Yeah.
You're aligned in your values.
Yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes. Where would you like to be in like 5 years?
I'd love to have one more book. I don't know if I'd like to have 2 more books by then. I'll take it, but at the same time, I learned through this launch, like, I don't know how these authors who launch a book every 2 years do it. I'm sure you feel the same way with releasing albums. It's just the launch itself is more grueling than the creative process, and most writers get in it for the creative side, not the marketing side. Mm-hmm. We definitely want to get it into our people's hands, but we probably got into it for the creative side, right? And this is what we were made to do. And so I think I'd like to have one more book, because I think that's about all I can do, is a book every 3 to 4 years. And then, I'd like to have kids. I'd like for my career to be at a place where it's not full-time, but it's full-time pay, because I built this to begin with in order to be available to a family. Mm-hmm. That is a priority. Freedom is a priority. I'm an Enneagram 7 through and through. And so just building a life where there's room for people to be around my table, people of all walks of life, for me to be learning and creating and growing alongside others I love. That's what would light me up. And so I don't know exactly what iteration that would be, but I do know I'd love to keep writing. I do know I'd love to keep building community. I do know I love to work, but I'd love to work in a little more spacious format.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you on that. That's kind of where I hope to be, in the next few years with baby number 2. Tell me about I've not written a book yet, but I have lots of aspirations to do that. What would you tell somebody who is just kind of starting out, like publishers, all that goes into getting a book out?
Totally. I think first you need to start writing and at least get an outline down on paper. Don't put the cart before the horse, and just start writing. Get 2 to 3 solid chapters out and get an outline hammered out and say, okay, do I have a proof of concept here? Is this viable? Is this something that I can tangibly pass along to readers? That's not journal entries or just things I like to talk about. That was one thing that I really learned in my process was, but what's the felt need of the reader? Are you serving the reader, or is this just like self-ingratiating? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, this isn't just for me to get my words out. This is to serve a reader to have a result at the end of the book. And so even if that result is enjoyment, leisure, fun, that does need to be the bottom line for the reader. It needs to serve them. And so that challenged me because I am the girl who like wrote a thesis paper from the middle paragraph up and down. Like I am not a girl who works from an outline. So boiling it into an outline and saying, oh, this will be the takeaway for the reader, and this is why it would serve them, that was really stretching for me. But it was good for me because whether you self-publish or traditionally publish, you've got to have that figured out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, it's a journal. And so for me, I started with that outline. I brought in some of my most type A friends to help me with that because I am not a linear thinker. And we got this outline hammered out. I got some paragraphs, zipped up. It felt like it told a compelling story. And then I did want to go the traditional route. So I started pitching to agents who then they do the pitching to publishers for you. But, if you were self-publishing, which is just as profitable these days and respected, you could start with finding an editor. And then you would need to monitor your own process of like, I need to get X amount of words done by this date. Thankfully for me, I loved being accountable to a publisher because I'm more accountable to a publisher than I would be to myself. So it was a good route for me because had I self-published, I might have stretched it into 4 years instead of 3. You just have a little more freedom to do it when you want. And I think I needed the fire under me to get it done. And so I'm grateful for that. And I think whatever route you go, it starts with writing, and it starts with boiling it down into a tangible outline so that you can determine how you will best serve your readers. And then writing, figuring out your format for how much you need to get done a day. I had a 6-month deadline, so I did 500 words a day. And I knew that gave me like 2 months on the back end of total space to edit it. And so I did my 500 words a day. It gave me room for writer's block, plenty of room on the back end for the days I inevitably didn't write because I went on a last minute trip or something like that. And that worked for me. But some people prefer to write on Fridays when they have childcare for 4 hours straight. It just depends on your life season.
Yes. I would think writing a book is very similar to writing a song. Like when I go into my co-writes, a lot of the times I'll get, instead of what are you feeling like writing today, it's what do you think we should write today? Like I'm thinking we should write something for a commercial, or like it's like you have a destination in mind and you think about that, kind of like on Project Runway, where they always say, who's your girl, where's she going? Me and Adam have been watching that a lot lately.
She's been watching it. I've been in the room.
You've been enjoying it with me, you liar. But they always say, what's the girl's purpose? Why is she going there? What's she going for? And I think all of those creative processes are, even though they're different forms, you have to figure out why you're writing or why you're singing. Go back to your why. Obviously you wouldn't pitch a country song to a classical artist, so it just depends on your why, I think.
I agree. And I will say, I will give you credit because I think writing a song has to be harder than writing a book because you've got to boil the point down into such a smaller format. Like it has to punch. It has to punch quickly and succinctly. And I'm like, oh, that feels like a lot of pressure.
And it has to rhyme.
And
music.
There are all these rules that have to go with it. I feel like with maybe free writing or creative writing, there's not as many, you're not as honed in on one. I mean, you do have a direction, but it's different. You're not as free, when you're writing a lyric, you have to think, okay, does that go with, does that word sing well? Does it go with the rhyme? Like there's all these little nuances that you have to think about too. So it can be tricky at times.
Well, I mean, you were so talented at what you do. And so I think it's got to be a lot harder than writing books, but I enjoy the writing process, and it's some fun to grow and be stretched in this medium.
Yes, yes. I love that. And hopefully I'll have a book of my own someday, or we'll have a book of our own.
Maybe.
That
Yeah.
would be really, really cool. Yes. So tell me about, how did you get the idea for your Dream to Done course? I got that and I loved it. I'm still using it.
Then Dream to Done for me was really special to conceptualize because I thought, okay, I have a lot of dreamers in my audience, but it's one thing to dream. How do we help them get that dream done? And I think that's where a lot of people feel inequipped. Like, how do I bring this to life? Like, that
Yeah.
feels overwhelming. And the first iteration, which was so fun to do together, was, the course paired with a mastermind because I love that one-on-one ideating time. That's really what lights me up. We haven't done another mastermind with the course since then. There will probably be another one in the years to come, but it really brings me so much joy to run alongside people and to help them bring that dream to life. And so I broke down what I needed in my own process. I needed to know how I was wired. I needed to make sure I was working from identity. I needed to make sure that I had my brand story zipped up and I was telling a story about who I am and how I show up and serve my clients. And so we basically boiled down those needs someone has in developing their process and developing their dream into a roadmap so that they could actually get that dream done. And so that is the course that's kind of a companion to this book because we can have guidance and mentorship and relational investment, but then there's also a strategy component. So where's that? And that's Dream to Done.
Yes, that's how I got this podcast going. Like, I watched every little video and like, okay, I'm with you. Okay, where do I click next? What do I do? Just to get it all done. So we're gonna start using it soon together. Yes, you don't know that yet.
Thanks for telling me.
You're welcome.
I love this last minute information.
Surprise.
Yes. Well, anyway, thank you so much for being on today and talking about all things mentorship. I really enjoyed it.
Thank y'all for having me. This was a joy. It's just a treasure to know y'all, and it's been fun, y'all.
Yes.
Hey there, don't go just yet. Be sure to hit subscribe to be notified of new episodes of Celebration Conversations. Show us some support by liking and sharing to inspire followers and friends alike. Follow me at syoungmusic on Instagram. I would love if you left a comment or a review about the episode.